Well, hello everybody. Hopefully, you can hear us loud and clear as we log on for a special edition of Kingdom Report Live. Certainly, under unusual circumstances, to be coming to you in the middle of the week and not necessarily on our Saturday broadcast as we typically do. Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. But here we are, coming to you with the unfortunate news that, yes, indeed, it appears that Disney parks are shutting down from coast to coast. The first starting this very week. On Saturday, the 14th, the Disneyland Resort will be shutting down all of its operations in the theme parks, and then moving on over to the hotels come Monday. So the Grand Californian Hotel and Spa, Disney's Paradise Pier Hotel, and then, of course, the Disneyland Hotel there on the Disneyland Anaheim property. They are giving the weekend to guests that are currently there as an opportunity for them to sort of figure out what they're going to do next and where they are going to stay. But Disneyland Resort ceasing operations. Interestingly enough, we do see that Downtown Disney will remain open. So it's very interesting to me that Downtown Disney is going to stay operating. I can't imagine, though, and some folks have already mentioned this to me, I can't imagine that we're going to see a whole lot of businesses within downtown keep their doors open. I just can't see that happening, especially given the fact that Disneyland is closing the theme parks and then the hotels a few days later. Downtown Disney businesses, they're all privately owned businesses for the most part. Just a handful of Disneyland-owned and operated stores and restaurants exist within Downtown Disney. The rest are all third-party vendors. So what I'm thinking is going to happen here is we are going to see potentially a lot of these third-party folks follow suit, and with that, probably the majority of the businesses within Downtown Disney are likely going to close behind them. Disney obviously can't make that decree for third-party businesses to just shut down, but think about how big Disney is, and if they're going to be closing for the health and benefit of their own cast members, then you can sure as heck bet that the surrounding businesses that function on their property are going to do the same. Otherwise, that's going to look bad on them, as if Disney cast members are somehow more important than their own employees for the third-party vendors. So I can see them following suit. You see here on the Disneyland.com webpage, here on the front page, you notice that there is this little marker right up at the top, temporary closure of the Disneyland Resort. This has finally gone up after several hours of there being no information on the website. It does seem as though this announcement was made rather quickly. As I had reported in another video that we had put up a little bit earlier today on the Kingdom Report YouTube page, many folks who work at the Disneyland Resort had no idea that the announcement had been made, and leadership had not been briefed yet on the ground that this was going to be happening, that they were going to be closing starting Saturday, March the 14th. So it was kind of a surprise to them, especially after just a few hours of having been removed, I should say, just a few hours having been removed from the governor of California, Gavin Newsom's press conference, where he outlined how the executive order that he had pushed forth sort of dictated that groups of more than 250 should disperse. No events, no meetings, no huge gatherings of over 250 people should be happening until all of this settles down. And then in the same breath, he said places like Disneyland are not falling under this executive order. And it made it very strange that he would say something like that and not indicate that, there's a lot more than 250 people at a place like Disneyland. And so at any rate, he did share that, and over the course of the press conference, nobody questioned him on it. They just continued into other things, but it was very interesting. He said that he had been in communication with Bob Iger, the CEO of the company, and or the outgoing CEO of Disney, and he had been in touch with him and said it's just a little bit more complex, is what he had said. And so Disneyland was not going to be a byproduct of the executive order, interestingly enough. And then just a couple hours later, we saw the statement released by Disneyland that mentioned it was going to be shuttering the theme parks come March 14th. So now here you see on the Disneyland.com homepage, finally the notice is up, temporary closure of the Disneyland Resort. It reads that the Disneyland Resort will be temporarily closed beginning on March 14th. The official statement reads as follows: while there have been no reported cases of COVID-19 at Disneyland Resort, after carefully reviewing the guidelines of the Governor of California's executive order and in the best interest of our guests and employees, we are proceeding with the closure of Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure Park beginning the morning of March 14th through the end of the month. The hotels of Disneyland Resort will remain open until Monday, March 16th to give guests the ability to make necessary travel arrangements. Downtown Disney will remain open, and we will monitor the ongoing situation and follow the advice and guidance of federal and state officials and health agencies. Disney will continue to pay cast members during this time. Disneyland Resort will work with guests who wish to change or cancel their visits and will provide refunds to those who have hotel bookings during this closure period. We anticipate heavy call volume over the next several days and appreciate guests' patience as we work hard to respond to all inquiries. If you fall in line with this and you are somebody who had planned on visiting the Disneyland Resort within the rest of March, you can certainly contact the Walt Disney Travel Company. They have listed their number right here, 714-520-5050. As it cites, I mean, you're probably going to be waiting on hold for quite a while. I can only imagine the amount of people calling, the amount of people wanting to know what the specifics of this shutdown are and how this is going to affect their individual travel package. I feel really bad for those folks that are coming a long distance outside of the country and individuals that have placed a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of energy into their trip, and now, unfortunately, and I understand it's due to health and safety, but unfortunately they can't make it because the resort is shutting down operations. I want to thank you for joining us. If you are just coming in, this is our live coverage of Disneyland and Walt Disney World shutdown news as the headlines broke today. A special edition of Kingdom Report Live here as we discuss all of the specifics of what's going on in this unprecedented announcement by the Walt Disney Company. Just truly something that never in my lifetime I thought I would see something like this. A pandemic that has swept the world, the coronavirus, COVID-19, as it has come to be known, certainly affecting a lot of people. Timothy, thank you so much for joining us in live chat. Mayor, thank you so much for also joining us in live chat. It appears here, a question from Mayor says, would you be open by next Thursday? According to Disneyland, no, they will not be open by next Thursday. They are planning on remaining closed through the end of March. Once again, unprecedented when you think back that, I think the only other time in recent history where Disneyland and Disney parks have had to sort of close down for any extended period of time, at least here domestically, that was September 11th. So it has been quite a while. I should say since Disneyland Resort has had to pull the plug on potentially, operating for guest pleasure and potentially for the safety of guests, having to pull the plug on their parks. And this is the first time since then where that has occurred. Walt Disney World has shut down only a handful of times, I think less than a handful of times, for hurricanes that have blown through in Orlando, and it was just not realistic for the parks to stay open when you had a Category 3 potentially blowing in and, could very well hurt people. So Walt Disney World has shut down a handful of times, but never for something like this. And so really when you think about it, just mind-boggling to know that Disney parks are now going to officially be closed around the globe for the first time, all parks. Shanghai Disneyland, Hong Kong Disneyland, Tokyo Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, Now Disney Cruise Line is also going to be shutting down here very soon. Just remarkable to think that all Disney Parks properties and Disney Parks and Resorts extended family, they're all ceasing operations. This is going to be huge for Disney in a business sense, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. One of the things I wanted to share with you is shortly after we put out our video earlier today regarding Disneyland and their closure, one of the things that broke shortly thereafter, and I had mentioned it in the video, was it's only a matter of time now before Walt Disney World Resort closes and announces that they will shut their gates. And here we have it from ABC Action News. It looks like the Tampa Bay affiliate reports that Walt Disney World Resort does plan on closing amid the coronavirus concerns. Walt Disney World Resort is closing its doors as the rest of the world remains on edge over the coronavirus outbreak. Disney, known for rarely closing its amusement park doors, will close Disney World in Central Florida from March 15th to March 31st. The announcement comes just hours after closures were announced for Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure Park in Southern California. They said, as an abundance of caution, Walt Disney World Resort in Florida and Disneyland Paris Resort will close at the end of business on March 15th through the end of the month. The company will pay its cast members during the closure period, and the hotels at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland Paris will remain open until further notice. Disney Springs at Walt Disney World will also remain open. It says Disney Cruise Line will also suspend all new departures beginning March 14th through the end of the month as well. When you think about Disney Cruise Line, I mean, that really does impact, 2, sometimes 4,000 people all at once based on the cruise and its itinerary. Really shocking to hear that, but at the same time, when you weigh out the pros and the cons and you weigh out the reality of it all, I guess perhaps not so shocking after all. So, it's shocking that all of this is happening at once, I think. It's a shock to the system, but when you really do look at sort of what Disney was going to have to do down the line, either they were going to have to wait to see if people got infected, which they would. Disney is the cross-section of the world when it comes to international visitors and everybody wanting to come enjoy themselves. So it really was just a matter of time before somebody got infected. So they were taking, it looks like, the proactive step, to try their best to shutter things before it got out of hand and before they contributed to the growing coronavirus. You see here Disney Cruise Line suspending through beginning March 14th through the end of the month. Disney said on its website that those who originally planned to go to the 2 California parks can head over to the Esplanade between Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure Park for the latest refurbishment information. So in Disney speak, if I can put on my detective hat, in Disney speak, that means they have the ticket booths ready to refund you. And ready to figure out how they can best accommodate you based on what's going on. So the guest services buildings, the ticket booths, and a variety of guest relations function windows are all in the Esplanade, and you don't have to have park ticket media to access those booths and access those desks. So I take it, based on what I read here, that individuals will be on hand cast member wise to take care of anybody that's confused or put out by this. I'm sure there are plenty of folks that are still going to be arriving throughout the month of March not knowing this. It's one thing to understand that Disney in general puts this out as a media press release and that the news and the media runs with these stories and tries to make everybody aware. But there's so much happening right now in terms of the coronavirus and how many companies are shutting down and who's telling who to work from home and all that sort of thing, that it very well could be a shock to many that Disney parks have closed down, because it's just not something that you see too often. So I can totally see several, if not a handful showing up still to both Disneyland in California and Walt Disney World in Florida, looking to enjoy themselves. And it's nice to hear that Walt Disney World plans on keeping their hotels open. I think that's really helpful because Disney World is a very different beast when it comes to international guests and vacationers. Folks that go to Walt Disney World tend to stay for upwards of a week or more, whereas Disneyland people tend to stay for a little less than a week, a couple days as a matter of fact. And so them planning at Disneyland to sort of, I guess, evict guests, if you will. I'm sure they don't want that word being used, but giving guests the opportunity to find other lodging through this weekend and then finally leaving come Monday. That's their deadline. They need to leave by this Monday. Learning that is interesting because to keep one coast's hotels open and the other coast's hotels to shut those down, that really does look like a strategic move because they don't really have any other option. When you think about the amount of people that stay at Walt Disney World at any given time, I mean, just one of their value resort hotel properties, something like the All-Star movie resorts, for example, there's close to 2,000 rooms in a resort like that. And that's just one resort. You multiply 4 people a room, you've got yourself a lot of individuals just sort of stranded. So, good on Disney for remaining open resort-wise out there, because I don't think they really had much of a choice, and they would have left a lot of people stranded if they did decide to make that hard decision to just shut things down. This is a lot to absorb, Kimothy in chat, absolutely. Yes, we will have a live Kingdom Report show on Saturday. This is just a special edition given how much is going on right now in terms of the coronavirus and Disney parks shutting down and the whole Disney parks and experiences portfolio being affected by this. Just really shocking to the system, and no doubt tomorrow's stock market is probably going to reflect all of this news, and I'm sure Disney stock is going to take quite a hit. It will take quite a tumble, but after all, these are people's lives, and whatever it takes to stop the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think, is very important. The story here from ABC Action News concludes, though, earlier in the month, Vice President Mike Pence said it's safe for healthy Americans to travel. The vice president even added, quote, "One of our favorite places to go when my children were young, and even before my children came, was in Orlando." Interestingly enough, when Vice President Pence was asked whether or not he would be taking his family to Disney World at this time, he didn't respond. And so I think that kind of tells you all you need to know in terms of whether or not the biggest officials among us would feel comfortable going to a place like Disney World surrounded by tens of thousands of people at any given time. We're going to switch over now to our friends at Mice Chat. They certainly have been covering this throughout the day as well, and we want to thank Chloe Ferreria for her news and her coverage. You'll see here breaking news with Walt Disney World and Disneyland Paris closing due to the coronavirus. She writes, breaking news due to coronavirus concerns and consultations with health and government officials. Walt Disney World's theme and water parks are set to close on March 16th through at least the end of the month. The hotels will remain open until further notice, as well as Disney Springs. This goes back to the idea, by the way, of both Downtown Disney and Disney Springs, the equivalent of Downtown Disney in Orlando, Florida. These are both remaining open, likely because these are majority-wise third-party vendors, companies that Disney doesn't control. They are their own private entities, and so Disney can say that they're closing their theme parks, they might be closing their hotels, but when it comes down to it, these are private businesses, so it's up to them as to whether or not they want to shut down in the wake of all of this. It'll be very interesting to see if any businesses do remain open in these various properties, but just something to definitely note that the hotels will remain open along with Disney Springs in Florida and then Downtown Disney in California, while the hotels will close in Anaheim. You see here the operations update from Walt Disney World Resort and the Paris Resort, as well as Cruise Line. Says, in an abundance of caution and in the best interest of our guests and employees, we are proceeding with the closure of our theme parks at Walt Disney World in Florida and Disneyland Paris Resort beginning at the close of business on Sunday, March 15th through the end of the month. Disney Cruise Line, again, will suspend all new departures beginning Saturday, March 15th through the end of the month. The Walt Disney Company will pay its cast members during that closure period. That's fantastic news, by the way. They don't have to, and they are. Knowing that many of the frontline cast members that work for Disney parks, knowing that there are so many of them who live paycheck to paycheck, it's kind of nice to know that Disney is sort of going out of their way to ensure that all of them are getting paid. You think about the sheer amount of cast members at both resorts. I mean, in Anaheim, I want to say it's close to 25,000, if not a little more at this point, cast members that work at Disneyland and just work in support roles and frontline and everybody that works on the property. And then you go out to Walt Disney World and you're pushing into the 70,000 plus category out there. So to pay for weeks on end everybody's wages when you're not bringing in any money, good on Disney for being the type of business that's leading by example in that regard, because that's a huge loss. I don't know. I haven't seen anything in terms of as to whether or not Disney is doing the same thing at the parks internationally. If the cast members and everybody affiliated with the resorts in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Paris ultimately are going to get paid. I mean, it does say here that Paris will. But very interesting to think about. And domestic Walt Disney Company employees who are able to work from home are being asked to do so, including those at the Walt Disney Studios, Walt Disney Television, ESPN, Direct-to-Consumer, and Parks, Experiences, and Products. We will continue to stay in close contact with appropriate officials and health experts. Goodness gracious. Jack-O-Lantern in chat says the official statement says Walt Disney World will close till April 1st. However, based on current COVID situation, do you think it will resume operations by then, or chances are high it will still remain closed? Jack, I'll tell you this. When it comes down to Disney satisfying guest demand, as somebody who's been a senior leader with the company, as somebody who has worked diligently alongside some of the great cast members that make the experience so spectacular, I can tell you that leadership is always looking for every way possible to satisfy guest demand, and that means staying open. That means, the fact that they did this today, coast to coast, that's why I think this is so stunning, because I thought they would have held off maybe a little bit longer, but given the fact that there are state and government officials that are finally weighing in and issuing executive orders to try and shut things down to stop the spread of this, it was only the responsible thing, I think, for Disney to do, to try and get ahead of this before somebody, which we all know it was going to happen eventually, somebody was going to be infected. They were going to figure that out at some point, and it was going to be revealed. It was probably going to be in media right away, and then how would Disney have looked? But to answer your question, do you think it will resume? Disney will resume operations by April 1st, or do you think that they will remain closed? I think that they're going to. I think the going rate right now is 14 days for the virus to pass. So 14 days of quarantine, 14 days of containment, as I understand it. So to remain closed for at least 14 days is going to help, I think, put a lid on anything that could have already been out there or could have already been affecting people. So I think ultimately this is going to help a great deal. I also think that Disney might try and come back a little earlier than that, and this all depends on how fast and how much worse this pandemic gets. It sounds like this is the tip of the iceberg. I was listening to some medical professionals today who were speaking on Capitol Hill, and one in particular was very direct about how there's a lot more to come, and they believe that a lot more people are going to be infected. Potentially up to 150 million Americans may be touched by the coronavirus, which is just nuts to think about, but certainly I think a sobering reality. So I think if if Disney has their way, they're going to be opening earlier. They're going to be opening things back up before April 1st. But I think as a good citizen, as a good steward of society, Disney being the image conscious company that it is, I definitely think that they are going to remain closed for the duration, while evaluating every day as to whether or not they can open back up. Because again, think about how many tens of thousands in Disneyland and hundreds of thousands over the course of the rest of the month for Walt Disney World. How many hundreds of thousands of guests overall are going to be impacted by not just Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, and then Disney Cruise Line all being shuttered at the same time. That's that's a lot of people's vacations that are just going to be upended, and that's a lot of money lost every single day by the Disney Company. And so, as a business, they are looking first and foremost at the bottom line. Well, I shouldn't say that. Secondly, they are looking at the bottom line, and first, they're looking after the health of their people, because they know that if their people get sick, that's even more costly, right? And they don't want to lose good people on the front lines. If they can help it, they want to try and prevent that. Jefferson Hausman in YouTube chat says, I was just about to go to Epcot training, OMG. Well, yeah, perhaps training's going to get tabled for the time being. I can't imagine there's going to be much to train you on if there isn't a whole lot going on in the parks, and things have been shut down. So very, very disappointing to know that there's so much that was being looked forward to moving into the month of March and spring break. And I know Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway had just opened out in Disney's Hollywood Studios. We had Rise of the Resistance open here a few months back, and so I know a lot of people were planning their big trip for spring break, and so disappointing to know that so many people are going to be sort of saddened and put out by this. But at the same time, let's be real, we got to be healthy, and stopping the spread of this is very, very important at this point in time. Lewis in chat just asked, I have a travel date to Walt Disney World on April 2nd. Will it be open? So Lewis, I'm telling you, I think Disney, as soon as they can open, they will open. There's no doubt about it. This is such a huge business loss. This is such a disruption to their business. They will open the moment they can. Like I said, I think that they might go the route of potentially trying to open earlier, and doing their best to, bring things back even before the end date. But at the same time, if this pandemic really does take off even stronger and becomes far worse, as some medical professionals seem to be predicting on Capitol Hill, I hate to say it, but I really do think that we could potentially see an even longer closure into April 2nd. Don't cancel anything yet. My advice to you would be to hang in there, because I think that there's a lot more that could be coming our way in terms of information, and who knows? We very well could find a way around the COVID-19 virus by that point. A lot of things can change in a very short amount of time, and so don't cancel anything at this point. Their official statement says they'll be reopening April 1st as of right now. So as of right now, you're in the clear, but we just have to watch the headlines and ensure that this pandemic doesn't get any worse than it already does. We'll go back to the Mice Chat story here about all of the Disney properties and parks and experiences closing. It says Disneyland Paris will also be closing on the 16th, with their hotels remaining open. Disney Cruise Line to suspend new sailings beginning March 14th. Absolutely incredible. They finish up here by mentioning that additional Disney coronavirus closures and updates, mentioning that the Walt Disney World cast members will be paid during the closure. We covered that. That's terrific news. Disney Springs and Downtown Disney will remain open during the closure. Walt Disney World will join all of the Disney parks in closure or limited closure. And Disneyland Park California Adventure will be closed March 13th until at least March 31st, reopening April 1st, and Disneyland's resort hotels will be closed beginning March 16th. Again, shocking to the system to know that Disney parks, which since 9/11 have not had more than a few days off, as we had mentioned a little bit earlier, Walt Disney World being the one property that has closed just a few times since then, mainly due to hurricanes blowing through, and they didn't have much of a choice. But Disneyland certainly not closing even during the measles outbreak. You might recall that here a few years back. There was a measles scare that was going on in Disneyland, and not even then did they close. And I remember many years back, I want to say is this 2009, somewhere in that era, where I was a part of leadership for Disneyland Resort, and at that time there was the swine flu. You might remember the swine flu being a huge issue and a very big thing at that point. And the swine flu ended up not being nearly as big of a it didn't end up being a pandemic. It didn't end up being something that nearly, took out thousands of people or anything like that. But there was a lot of fear, and Disney responded much the same way they had been responding up until today, and that was just by putting hand sanitizers at the main entrance, which has been the last few weeks at Disney parks. You've been seeing that more and more, and hand washing stations, stuff like that. So at any rate, wild to know that Walt Disney World and Disneyland both after this weekend will be shuttered for the remainder of March. Just kind of a remarkable thing. We'll jump on over here to the Walt Disney World page. You'll notice here at waltdisneyworld.com, as of right now, no notice as to what's happening, no notice as to what's going on. So we are left in the dark, I guess. If we're Walt Disney World guests, we'll go ahead and refresh just to make sure that there's nothing in here. Yeah. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we have an update. Looks like temporary closure of Walt Disney World Resort theme parks. There we go. So they are beginning their closure, as they mentioned here, March 16th through the end of the month. So much has been said about this already when I read these statements. So we already know the date range. And it's interesting because I clicked refresh on the page, and this is typically the page, this one that says please remain on the page. That's typically there because so many people are visiting the site and the pages can't switch because they're being inundated with traffic. So something to definitely think about as you head on over to the Disney sites. Everybody's looking for information right now. Everybody's trying to figure out what to do about their vacations. Lewis again says in chat that he's going to lose a lot of money if he cancels this travel. And yeah, I understand. Yeah, a lot of people are. And just think about this. The one positive we can spin on this is that you have a trip come April 2nd. So you're in the clear as of right now, according to all the statements. You're in the zone where they plan on potentially reopening. Imagine if you were 2 days in reverse, at the end of the month of March, you would definitely have to be canceling. There'd be no way around it. Now, one of the luxuries of booking through Disney is that you do have the ability to get that full refund. Disney, based purely on their past experience, they're going to be very supportive, as they typically are in these situations. It's a pandemic. It's a global pandemic, so they look to find every which way possible to make sure that you walk away happy, because they know you don't really have a choice. They're shutting down their parks. It's their fault that they're closing. They have to do it. Well, let me rephrase that. It's not their fault. They have to close the parks to be good, citizens and to showcase that, they care. So this being sort of their fault in that they need to close, they know that you don't have another choice, right? That your Disney parks vacation was banked purely on the fact that it was going to be open when you got there. And so they know that. That's kind of what I mean. So they are going to find every which way possible to help you in this situation and do their best to ultimately find you some either additional dates that you can come back, find some ways to complimentary, provide you some complimentary tickets. They'll do their best to support you. I know that. That's the Disney way. And in a situation like this where it's going to, like I said, affect hundreds of thousands of people between all of their parks and experience properties, this is definitely something that's going to Well, it's going to take a while, too, I think, to get a hold of somebody from Walt Disney Travel. You do not envy those travel agents right now. They've got a lot to deal with. But, yeah, just think about that, Lewis and Chat. You have the opportunity to, potentially be a part of their reopening just a few days following March. And if you were 2 days behind, you would be in their closure category. You wouldn't have a choice. So I wish you a lot of luck. I certainly hope that you don't lose out, and that this COVID-19 thing starts to dissolve here very shortly, and hopefully we can get past it. We take a look at USA Today's coverage of what's going on at Walt Disney World and around the theme park industry. They mention here that the coronavirus is closing not just Disney World and Disneyland Paris, but also Universal Orlando Resort is shutting down as well. The story here from writer Brian Alexander reads as follows. Orlando's Disney World, Disneyland Paris, and Disney Cruise Lines will shut down temporarily in the wake of growing concerns over the global coronavirus pandemic. The Universal Orlando Resort announced its theme park closure Thursday as well, and the Walt Disney Company announced the shutdown Thursday with a statement hours after announcing the closure of Disneyland. They say, quote, in an abundance of caution and in the best interest of our guests and employees, we are proceeding with the closure of our theme parks at Walt Disney World Resort in Florida and Disneyland Paris Resort, the corporate statement said. Closures begin at the close of business on March 15th and remain through the end of the month. Cast member employees from each location will get paid during the closure. The hotels and retail complexes at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland Paris will remain open until further notice. The statement said Disney Cruise Line will suspend all new departures beginning March 14th through the end of the month. Universal Orlando Resort announced its closure Thursday, effective close of business March 15th and potentially lasting through March 31st. Quote, out of an abundance of caution and to assist with our nation's preventative efforts, Universal Orlando Resort will temporarily close its theme parks. A statement on the resort's website read, we anticipate remaining closed through the end of March, but will continue to evaluate the situation. Universal Orlando's hotels and City Walk will remain open. Universal Studios Hollywood announced closure for the same period Thursday. You got to kind of wonder if they are doing the same thing there, where it comes down to third-party vendors, right? As part of City Walk, that's their equivalent of Disney Springs, their equivalent of Downtown Disney. So that's why City Walk will remain open. It's up to each individual company that operates those storefronts as to whether or not they're going to stay open. The story continues that California's Disneyland announced earlier Thursday it would close Saturday through the end of March. Quote, while there have been no reported cases of COVID-19 at Disneyland Resort, after carefully reviewing the guidelines of the Governor of California's executive order and in the best interest of our guests and employees, we are proceeding with the closure of Disneyland Park and California Adventure Park. The hotels of Disneyland Resort, as we have mentioned, will remain open until Monday, March 16th. Giving those guests the ability to make necessary travel arrangements, and Downtown Disney remains open. It says here, museums and attractions across the country, from the New York City Met to Washington, D.C.'s Smithsonian, and shows on Broadway have closed as well. Once again, USA Today, Brian Alexander, the writer there, thank you for that. Nuts, right? Just nuts to think that we're in this place, that it's 2020, the year 2020. It's modern times, and here we are dealing with a pandemic that is sweeping the world and is infecting people left and right. Certainly, some folks have lost their lives in this situation, and nothing to kid about, nothing to joke about. Truly tragic to know that especially older people seem to be much more compromised by COVID-19 than, say, children do. So pretty startling to see some of the numbers starting to roll in as to the type of individuals that are being most affected by this. At the same time, it's important to know, and I think the one light that we have kind of at the end of the tunnel here is that we're not in terrible straits. And so what I mean by that is the majority of the people that have been quarantined and have been sort of rehabilitated through the coronavirus, the majority of people are coming out on the other side okay. So, I mean, there's the one big piece to this that's positive, and that is, hey, you're going to be potentially all right. You're going to be, if you have a healthy immune system and you get quarantined the right way the first time, and you get the medical treatment that you need, you're likely going to be all right on the other end. I think the scariest part of all of this is that there is no vaccine for it. And so that might just be the worst part of all of this, is that there is no easy out. There is no easy vaccine to help just sort of kill off this virus to any degree. And much like we have for the common flu, there's a flu vaccine. Well, we don't have a vaccine for coronavirus as of yet. And so until that is formulated and created, and I understand it might take up to a year potentially to do that. Hopefully it's been fast-tracked, and got a lot of people working on it given the widespread urgency of this. I can only imagine that that's going to still take a while. So as I had mentioned, though, the one positive coming out of all of this is that we are in a situation where those who have been treated, those who have been under quarantine, their immune systems are fighting back, they are fighting back, and they're coming out on the other end, healthy again. So, cross your fingers. Hopefully you and your family won't be affected by this. And as many of the common tips have said, just make sure that you're washing your hands underneath that hot water for more than 20 seconds with the soap. Ensure that you're not touching surfaces and then touching your face. I think if there's one thing that I've learned in this entire process of definitely examining what I do day to day and ensuring that I'm not going through and touching surfaces and touching my face, is that I tend to touch my face a lot, and I didn't even think I did that. So it's something that I'm just definitely thinking about more and more. I'm certainly more cognizant of the fact that I am now touching my face all the time. And so it's something that I'm like slapping my hands and saying, no, not until you wash your hands. No, not until you get that hand sanitizer. As I had mentioned in our video that was released earlier today after Disneyland had shut down, that was all about the Disneyland closure. I don't know why people are buying up toilet paper. Does that confuse anybody else? It seems a little strange to me that toilet paper is being hoarded. I don't believe one of the conditions of coronavirus happens to be diarrhea. I don't think that that's the case. So I don't necessarily understand why toilet paper is being hoarded by individuals. But fortunately for me, I made a mistake, and rather than buying a round of paper towels through Amazon, one point here about a month ago, rather than buying just a batch of paper towels, I ended up buying way more toilet paper than I could have ever wanted. So I'm sitting on a stockpile, and the way toilet paper is going, I mean, it's like having gold locked away. So I might barter with my toilet paper here soon. Oh, I also have an entire case of Clorox sanitizer wipes. So again, I have true gold right now in this climate at the moment. So I'm gonna hold on to these suckers and make sure that I use them for the common good and help people that need it, and support folks that have nothing left to wipe their bum with. So I'm gonna use it for that. Certainly, we don't want to minimize the seriousness of the coronavirus, especially now that Disney parks from coast to coast have shut down. We'll take a look at this story from Yahoo here. It says up to 150 million Americans could get coronavirus. That is a projection that is going around right now. Very critical, very serious when you think about it. This here coming from the AFP, it says that between 70 to 150 million people in the United States could eventually be infected with the novel coronavirus, according to a projection shared with Congress, a lawmaker said Thursday. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib made the remarks during a hearing of the House of Representatives with members of the president's coronavirus task force, confirming earlier reports by U.S. media outlets, including Axios and NBC News. Quote, Congress's attending physician told the Senate that he expects between 70 to 150 million people to eventually contract the coronavirus in the United States. Axios had reported that Dr. Brian Monahan conveyed the projection to Senate senior staff on Tuesday, telling them they should prepare for the worst and offering advice on how to remain healthy. The upper end of the projection is about 46% of the U.S. population. of 327 million people. By comparison, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, warned this week that up to 70% of her country's population could get the virus. I'm going to repeat that. Angela Merkel says that potentially up to 70% of her country's population could get the virus. Just unreal. Asked by Tlaib whether he believed the projection was accurate, Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, told the hearing, quote, "We really need to be careful with those kinds of predictions because that's based on a model." He added that, quote, "All models are good as the assumptions that you put into the model," end quote. And that with containment and mitigation, the upper end of the projection could be avoided. About 80% of coronavirus cases are mild, and the overall mortality rate is around 1%, according to the latest estimate provided by Fauci to Congress on Wednesday. At the low end of the projection, this would mean that about 700,000 deaths could happen. At the high end, it would mean 1.5 million deaths. Now, there is a sobering statistic. Heart disease, the story goes on, was the leading cause of death for Americans in 2018, with just over 650,000 deaths in 2018. The flu and pneumonia caused around 60,000 deaths. As of Thursday, there had been more than 1,300 cases and 38 deaths, according to a tracker maintained by Johns Hopkins University. Risk from coronavirus starts to increase for people who are over 60 and is heightened more for those over 80. As well as for people with conditions like diabetes, heart disease, or lung disease, or whose immune systems are compromised. Fauci noted that a 2014 model by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention projected the African Ebola outbreak could affect more than 1 million people. But this was eventually not the case, and the final number was under 30,000. Well, let's hope that that ends up being the same case again, that the projections just happen to be wild and large, and that ultimately we end up finding ourselves in a place where it's far less people in the end that are truly affected by the coronavirus. The story concludes by saying Fauci also responded to a query about people having difficulty getting access to tests, for which U.S. authorities have come under severe criticism. Quote, "The system is not really geared to what we need right now, what you are asking for. That is a failing," said Fauci. Quote, "Let's admit it." Quote, "The idea of anybody getting it easily, the way people in other countries are doing it, we're not set up for that. Do I think we should be? Yes, but we're not." Vice President Mike Pence, the White House's point man for the crisis, claimed earlier this week that, quote, 1 million tests are in the field and 4 million would be going out soon. But the CDC's director, Robert Redfield, said that the kits were not operational because there was a shortage of substances that activated them, called reagents, and they also required more nasal swabs and trained staff. At any rate, I don't think anybody could have predicted that the coronavirus was going to even be an issue, let alone something that was going to take hold as fast as it has. I see here in our YouTube chat that Epic Gamer Squad says, "I am a ride operator and I was finishing closing Slinky Dog Dash for the night. My supervisor came over and said that we were going under quarantine for the next 2 weeks. So don't worry." Smiley face. Well, Epic Gamer Squad, thank you. Yes, you are in fact going under quarantine. Appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time off. I'm very happy to hear that Disney has decided to pay all of the cast members from coast to coast and everybody that is affected by this that they are sending home. He responds by saying, "I have to be visited by a specialist on my dorm tomorrow at 11:15 a.m., so wish me luck." I do wish you luck. Hopefully nothing will be found. Hopefully nothing will be discovered, and that you'll just be one of many who are sitting this out away from work and waiting for the all call to come back. Catherine Chrisman says that she's shocked by this. Catherine, yeah, welcome to the party. Absolutely. We all are. And to know that as Disney fans, we have this huge piece of property out in Orlando, and to know that we have this heartfelt resort here in California that's part of the original founding as part of Disneyland, as part of the Disney parks, and to know that we have all the parks around the world shut down, Disney Cruise Line shut down, just to know that we have all of these properties in the Disney portfolio that are now closed. Just unreal. I'm feeling the shock too. And Epic Gamer Squad says, well, Disney College program gets enough for food and stuff. LOL. Yeah, I know you guys have to pay into that, right? So thank you for all that you do. I know sometimes it's paycheck to paycheck working on the Disney College program. If you're part of that internship program out in Florida, especially, and it's a big part of you got to pay for that room and board, right? You got to pay for it. So thank you for working and making all that magic for us each and every day. I see here Catherine mentions that she has a business meeting at Downtown Disney on Saturday. Should she go or not? Well, Catherine, I'll tell you this. Downtown Disney is remaining open. It's one of the stories that we've been covering today. Downtown Disney here in Anaheim and Disney Springs, the Downtown Disney equivalent out in Florida, in Orlando, they're both going to remain open. Now, I don't know where specifically you're having your dinner meeting on Saturday, but I would definitely call ahead just because Disney can't force the third-party institutions that operate their storefronts in Downtown Disney to close. They're their own independent businesses. So that's why Downtown Disney remains open, I think. That's why they don't just shutter the entire resort. They shuttered everything except for Downtown Disney. Now, as I've mentioned here a few times, a little bit earlier, I can't imagine a whole lot of the Downtown Disney storefronts remaining open while the theme parks and the hotels close, just because how would that look? You know, your own people, I guess, if you were, say, Sephora, which operates in Downtown Disney, you're not going to keep your people working and say, you know, oh, it's all right that they sent all the cast members and all the Disney people home out of an abundance of caution, and say that, you know, your employees, I guess, don't measure up as much, they don't matter as much. I can't see anybody saying that in good conscience, and definitely think that if you're thinking about a dinner meeting on Saturday, wherever it is that you plan on eating at, go ahead and give them a call as the date gets closer, and just ask what their operational plan is, because I fully see, especially given the rest of the month this playing out, I fully see the majority of places, if not everybody, in Downtown Disney and Disney Springs, and then Universal City Walk out in Orlando, I fully see everybody closing up shop just because they need to follow suit, much like Disney has. They need to follow Disney as the role model in this, because how do you say that to your people? How do you say that to your employees? You know, oh, Disney sent their folks home, but we're going to keep you here. I just can't see that happening. So. And Epic Gamer Squad says, if we are clean and healthy, we are supposed to go into the hotels within the next 3 days and get everyone rushed out and home. Interesting. Cast members, he says, are getting double pay for helping with evacuation, that's in quotes, in the hotels. So he's praying, and or they, Epic Gamer Squad, I don't know if it's he, she, or anywhere beyond, but in the hotel, so praying that they are clean and healthy. Yeah, I'm praying that you're clean and healthy too, and that when it comes down to it, that double pay would be pretty darn nice. So it sounds like that's the plan, huh? To help folks get out of the hotels on property and find their way to other lodgings. Very interesting. And thank you, Catherine. Thank you for subscribing. I'm thrilled that you could be a part of the broadcast. And, you know, we have a lot of videos here that we put up, usually under much happier terms, throughout the week. And then we also have a live show on Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. That's Kingdom Report Live traditionally, but this, of course, is a very special broadcast, a very unusual termed broadcast to be coming to you via all this big breaking news. So at any rate, Epic Gamer Squad, I do wish you all the best and hope that you also get your clean bill of health, and that you're well taken care of, and hopefully you'll be able to support all of the guests that remain at Walt Disney World in a time where all the theme parks are going to be closed. Again, just wild. Something that I definitely wanted to point out here is the phone directory. If you have a trip to Walt Disney World coming up, ladies and gentlemen, here are some of the contacts you can reach out to. And we've already had some folks in our chat tonight talking about this. What happens if you have a trip planned and you need to cancel or you need to reschedule or any number of things get in the way? Well, here you go. You can call the Walt Disney World Resort directly, and you'd want to call the Disney Resort Hotel Reservations line. That's typically where you need to be reaching out to. That would be at 407-939-1936. Also the UK number there, 0800-1690-730, and in the IE, 1-800-812-676. So once again, those numbers are listed on DisneyWorld.com's homepage under contact, and they'll bring up all the information for you there. That way you can make sure that you're getting in touch with Disney proper, and they can take care of everything that you're going through. They understand. I mean, they're going to be dealing with this now, I think, for the next month. They're going to be dealing with huge volumes of calls coming in, just trying to resurrect everybody's trips and definitely try to support them the best way that they can. Obviously, this is a situation that nobody could have planned for. You know, Disney has great guest recovery solutions most of the time, but this is a situation where I really can imagine, especially as somebody that has been as a part of senior leadership with Disney, you know, situations like this, these one-offs that are truly shocking to the system, you know, that are truly out of the ordinary, that no one could have really prepared for. And even though there's a lot of emergency preparedness that Disney does, this is one of those situations where it's unheard of that all the Disney parks are closing. It's unheard of that Disney Cruise Line is shuttering. That doesn't happen. So to know that they are now in this situation, that tells me that anybody you come across is probably given full compensation power to you know, reasonably take care of you, you know, to meet you where you are in terms of what you've already put into the trip, and to find a way for you to still enjoy your trip, even if that means a month, 2 months, 3 months down the line. Yeah, I have a trip coming up to Walt Disney World in May. I don't know if this is all going to be taken care of by then. Yeah, I've had a couple of questions in here a little bit earlier, and asking about how long do you think this is going to go. To be quite honest with you, I mean, Disney will open as soon as they possibly can, because they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day by not functioning as a theme park, by not functioning as a cruise line, by not functioning globally on this front. And keep this in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Disney parks are the company's cushion. So in a much bigger sense, Disney as a company relies on the parks and resorts portfolio to be the cushion for the rest of the organization. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, right now, Onward. Okay, Disney Pixar's Onward has just come out. So Onward comes out, say it flopped completely, and nobody went to watch it. They have more of a problem in the Disney Studios live action area, where they have more flops than animation ever does. But say for whatever reason, Onward flopped. Okay, nobody went to go see Onward, and it sits to this very day with 100 million less than expected. Okay, in terms of total ticket sales. So who makes up the difference for that? It's always been Disney Parks. So Disney Parks has allowed the Disney Company to fail on other fronts for decades, and that's something that people don't think about, is that the Disney Parks allow for the cushion for the rest of the company to experiment, to fail, to misstep, and Disney Parks will always be there to come in and sort of balance things out, to come in and support what otherwise created an imbalance, if that makes any sense. As a matter of fact, back when I was working with Disney in so many different leadership capacities and across the board, I was dealing with that a lot, where say John Carter from Mars, or whatever film we had out at the time. Oh my gosh, Lone Ranger, there's a bust. There was one that was terrible. So I was there during that time where Lone Ranger came out featuring Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp. Okay, no one saw that. We had the big premiere at Disney California Adventure. Absolutely no one saw the Lone Ranger movie, and unfortunately that ended up being a huge bust for the company, a huge bust for the studios. And who ends up supporting the big failure? Well, that's Disney Parks, of course. And so what ended up happening was across the board at Disney Parks, hours had to be cut, entertainment had to be slashed, all kinds of things ended up being reduced in order to make up for these huge missteps by another segment of the company. And that continues to this very day. So when you take the cushion out from underneath the organization, what happens? They can't misstep, right? They can't make a huge foul up of a mistake. They can't trip up. And that comes down to a much bigger idea here. And that is Disney parks can't remain closed for a long period of time. They just can't. The Disney Company relies on the parks and resorts and cruise line industry to be everything they need in terms of a safety net for the rest of the organization. So they will open as soon as they possibly can, as soon as it's healthy enough to do so, as soon as they can convince everybody that it's safe, they will reopen. There's no doubt about that. Epic Gamer Squad says, Disney is caring so much about us. I feel so special because we are being offered so much for the time that we are working through quarantine. Like I may be placed in the land pavilion to help with the economics and produce in that pavilion. That's terrific to hear. I'm glad that Disney is taking a very soft-handed approach to all of this and being as supportive as possible. Catherine asks, do you have an educated guest on lost revenue for one day of closure for Disneyland? Being a part of Disneyland as long as I was for well over a decade as part of the leadership team, I can tell you that there's so many different departments that play into the overall resort picture. Okay, so there's so many different revenue streams that play into Disneyland in an operating day. But what I can tell you is that on an average operating day, and this is sort of cognizant of how Disneyland has grown so popular in the last, I want to say, probably 10 years, where overall Disneyland has become busy every day. You know, it's one of those places that everyone visits all the time, and it's quite a locals park, and a lot of annual pass holders come and hang out here at Disneyland, and it's the place that everybody comes in after work and just, you know, lingers for a while. And so part of that, because there's over 1 million annual pass holders, you know, they're a big part of the local economy. They're a big part of the day-to-day operation too, and stimulating the spending on the food and beverage and merchandise and stuff like that. But if I'm going to take an educated guess for you, Catherine, on lost revenue for one day of closure at Disneyland, I'll tell you, I mean, I really do think that when you examine like one restaurant at Disneyland, one restaurant at Disneyland for the course of a year usually generates an income of somewhere near $20 to $23 million. That's one restaurant. Okay, and that's a real stat. I'm not going to tell you which restaurant, but that's a real stat. That's something that's realistic. And those prices, they get inflated every year, so I'm sure that income is even higher than it was at a couple years ago when I departed. But at any rate, that's one restaurant. Okay, so if you narrow this down to, you know, what would that restaurant make in a day? You know, I'm thinking, my goodness, wow. You know, you combine that with how many restaurants there are in the resort, with how many stores there are in the resort, with how many vendors there are, with how many you know, park tickets get sold, and then you look at the overhead of how many cast members work there and how many employees support behind the scenes. I'll tell you that I think that every day Disneyland goes without being open, I think that they are losing upwards of probably $90 to $100 million. Likely in that category. So I think that there's such a, because, and this also comes down to, by the way, because I know that sounds like a staggering amount, this also comes down to all of the tickets that are being purchased for future use. So that's not just in one day. You know, so that's not just oh, you know, it's all coming in today. That's revenue coming in today for a trip in the future. That's revenue coming in today via Walt Disney Travel Company for Disneyland, but they're going to be cashed in, you know, a few months down the line. So I want to make that clear, because that sounds like a shocking number for one day at Disneyland. I think we're looking at those, like, you know, double digits up to the triple digits, you know, into the upper millions there. So, you know, I would say conservatively 50 to 80 million, somewhere in there, based purely on everything travel, based purely on everything related to ticket sales, related to food and beverage revenue, related to parking, related to hotel sales. So if we're looking at the whole picture, the whole enchilada, everything that sort of feeds into this, I think you're looking at significant, and that's gross, by the way. So that's not after all the deductions. That's not after everything that needs to play into what depletes it. I think gross revenue, you're looking at huge numbers in that regard. We take a look here also at some of the other comments that we have in our chat. Nikki says that my kids are crushed. I'm losing so much money. Nikki, I take it that are you talking about a trip? Are you talking about your kids are crushed because you were planning on taking a trip? And if so, did you book through the Walt Disney Travel Company? They're looking at giving full refunds. I know a lot of plane flights also, something to keep in mind. A lot of airlines are giving waivers to try and move and help you move your flights to other periods where you might be able to travel again. So something to keep in mind. And you can definitely go to, as mentioned here by Epic Gamer in the chat, you can definitely go to the Disney website and the call center and go ahead and let them know what you're going through. They'll be able to help you out there, okay? We were just talking about that number, as a matter of fact. I'll go back to the screen so you can take a look, and you can give them a call. It's 407-939-1936. That's 407-939-1936. That's if you're staying at a Disney Resort hotel, by the way. So I don't know if that pertains to you. If you're taking a trip and staying at a hotel outside of property, I don't even know which property you're going to. But yeah, definitely numbers that you can reach out to for support. Disney's there to definitely help you out. And my trip again is coming up in May. It's coming up in the beginning of May. I was going to head on out to Walt Disney World for the Flower and Garden Festival, which I understand every year just blooms better and more beautiful than before. Nikki mentions that her trip is coming up March 22nd. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's tough. So you're definitely going to be blocked out in terms of the parks being shuttered, the resorts being shuttered. So I'm sorry to hear that, Nikki. Yeah, this is tough. This is going to be a real struggle for a lot of families right now. This is spring break season, guys. I mean, this is really significant. So this is going to affect a lot of folks. And staying outside the property. Okay. Well, I mean, Nikki, this is a global pandemic. So I know a lot of companies, at least the responsible companies, are making considerations for everybody. And I'm sure whoever you're staying with still wants your business. So go ahead and give them a call and just kind of plead your case and let them know what you're going through and what you're dealing with. And hopefully they'll come through for you. And if they want to keep your business, I'm sure they'll do right by you. So something to consider there. One thing that I wanted everybody to take a look at here is the live global chart for the coronavirus global cases by the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. Folks, this is something pretty pretty substantial. This is something that I don't think a lot of folks know they can look up, but it is a live map, and right now in Orlando, and I'm zooming in here so we can take a look at the cases that have been reported close enough. I just saw one. Oh, there it is. Where are we? So in Florida, there's currently 35 confirmed cases of the COVID-19 coronavirus. 2 deaths so far in Florida, but if you look at this, down by Lakeland, Florida, these cases exist, and so, I mean, this is just down I-4 from Orlando and from the Walt Disney World Resort, so something to definitely take a look at there. Total deaths worldwide for the coronavirus at the moment, 4,720, but this is a light at the end of the tunnel, ladies and gentlemen. Keep this in mind. Total recovered people that have gone through quarantine and come out on the other side healthy again, 68,324. Don't want to minimize the fact that these total deaths even exist. One is too many. To know that 4,720 have perished because of this pandemic is truly startling. But to know that 68,324 have recovered is really, really positive. So great news on that front. But total confirmed, man, 128,343. 1,600 of those happen to be in the United States. We'll zoom out here and we'll also move on over and take a look at Anaheim. We'll take a look at Disneyland's area and see what we have in terms of the coronavirus updates here. It would appear, there we are, as it starts to zoom in. Not noticing anything so far. I know that they exist in the region. I know that some cases have been reported. For whatever reason, it's not showing up on the live map here. Wonder why that is. Interesting. Take a look and see as far as the United States goes if we can drill it down. So 4 deaths in California so far. Looks like Hanford, Visalia, Tulare, so north of Los Angeles, more in the Central Valley region, where people have passed away. Up in the Bay Area near San Francisco, people have passed away as well. Yeah, pretty tragic stuff. I know that there were some claimed cases here in Southern California, though, up and down. There were some in Orange County, so I'm looking for the breakdown of that, and I can't seem to find it. But at any rate, I know that there were a handful that were in Orange County. There were a handful that were in LA County. And, you know, as population dense as Southern California is, it's kind of remarkable that more people aren't affected in Southern California. It looks like maybe they've been quarantined very quickly. You see here Anaheim is right here central in the screen, and I'm not seeing any other red dots around here, but I know that they exist. So I think it's interesting that that this map that's supposed to be in real time doesn't necessarily show anything around Anaheim. Maybe that's good news. Maybe they were mistaken after all. But at any rate, total recovered in California stand currently at 6. So something to take a look at. My goodness. Catherine mentions that it makes no sense that Disneyland would be exempt in the governor's declaration today. Yeah. When I heard it live, I was kind of startled myself when he said his executive order basically outlined that anybody planning on going to a trip, anybody planning on going to an event that had over 250 people present needed to disperse. It probably shouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. He's asking for all those events to be tabled for now, at risk of, potentially putting more people at risk. So he said, forget about it. And then in the same breath had mentioned, and Disneyland is not a place that this applies to, as well as some other theme parks. I've spoken to Bob Iger directly, and it's a little bit more complex. So that's why. And nobody followed up with him. Nobody said anything. So, it's funny. So I don't understand how that worked, but within a couple of hours, the Walt Disney Company did the right thing and did what we're talking about here tonight, and that is they shut down the parks from coast to coast. So yeah, I don't understand how the governor let Disneyland, a place with international visitors, you think would be kind of a ground zero of worry for the state, to think that they weren't part of that executive order is kind of mind-boggling to me. So happy to see that Disneyland did the responsible thing and closed things down. My goodness, yep. Once again, folks, this has been our continuing coverage of the big news. Disney parks shutting down from coast to coast and around the world. Once again, if you have a trip, if you have something that you were planning for spring break, it may be in jeopardy, especially if you were planning on doing this through the end of the month. That is when Disney parks are scheduled to reevaluate and potentially reopen come April 1st. So all things to consider if you were planning on a big trip to Walt Disney World, maybe a trip on out to Disneyland. Keep that in mind, that these parks and resorts are going to be kind of under a lockdown. Some of the hotels are remaining open in Walt Disney World. Disneyland's hotels are closing this coming Monday. So following this weekend, guests staying at the hotels of the Disneyland Resort will be asked to leave. And Downtown Disney, as well as Disney Springs, so Downtown Disney here in Anaheim, Disney Springs out in Orlando, will remain open for the time being. Epic Gamer Squad says that they've heard that 2 cast members have confirmed cars here in Walt Disney World. Do you mean confirmed cases in Walt Disney World? Maybe that's what you mean. But if that's the case, my goodness, that changes the game. And I think that this really was a situation in which the Disney company decided that they were going to, go out of their way and get ahead of this, before it blew up and before this became a real problem for them. I think that Disney looked at this and thought it's just a matter of time before we have employees, before we have guests show up infected or infect our people. So let's get ahead of this and try and shut it down and be the responsible stewards. Okay, so Epic Gamer does clarify cases. So we've heard that 2 cast members have confirmed cases here in Walt Disney World. I wouldn't be surprised, Epic Gamer. I think that I'm shocked maybe it's not more, given the fact that cast members come in contact with thousands of people a day and touch all kinds of surfaces. There's only so much cleaning that can be done. It gets down to the point where it just can't be... things can't be clean 24/7. You can't have every surface completely clean all the time when you have such a huge flow like Walt Disney World has. So it's nice to hear that they have quarantined everybody in terms of Walt Disney World cast members that may have potentially been affected by this, and that everyone is being taken care of and being taken a look at. And we wish you again a lot of good luck in your specialist visit, and hopefully you come out healthy on the other side, and you can tell us about it and we can laugh about it on the other end. That's kind of what we're looking forward to. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, up to 150 million Americans potentially could be getting the coronavirus. That is the U.S. projection coming from Capitol Hill today. Terrifying to think about, but at the same time, a lot more individuals are overcoming this. A lot more individuals have recovered from their quarantine than have passed. And I know that the potential is still there, and it is still more lethal than the flu, as it has been determined. But I definitely want to make sure everybody understands that this projection, as terrifying as it is, the Ebola virus, as mentioned in this Yahoo News story, also had a huge projection that was supposed to affect into the millions as well. So all things to consider. And at the end, the Ebola virus only affected like 30,000 people. So still way more than it should have, especially for being Ebola. And the only way you can catch that is interesting. So just to know that still affected 30,000 people. It's still a startling number, but as of right now, we're sitting in the 4,000 plus category of folks that have been affected by this on a global scale, that have been killed, the deaths, if you will. Still way too many, still far too many for comfort. But at any rate, a lot more that have recovered. So once again, good news to know that we are in that situation where people are coming out on the other end healthier than we found them. So all things to once again keep in mind as you go about your business, and you don't let this dominate you and your day. Don't let this ruin your day. Don't let this dictate how you act, okay? Just be cognizant of what you're doing and how healthy you are, and ensuring that you are wiping down surfaces, washing your hands, and taking care of things, okay? Just make sure you are doing what you need to do to stay healthy and go about your life. That's the best you can do in situations like this. So once again, this was the screen I was looking for. 4,728 total deaths, far more than there should ever be for something like this in the modern age, and then 68,324 that have recovered, with a confirmed total of 128,343 in terms of total confirmed cases. Well, folks, that about wraps up our special coverage for this Disney Parks discussion, this Disney Parks update on the coronavirus and how it is affecting Disneyland to Walt Disney World and beyond, especially now as all the international parks are all set to close if they have not been already. Disneyland Paris is joining the Asian parks in closure here very soon. Once again, if you are looking to spend time on your trip, enjoy your trip to the domestic Disney parks or Disneyland Paris during the spring break period, and it happens to fall before April 1st. You might want to contact Walt Disney World or your Disney park that you are visiting and let them know that you had a trip scheduled then, and hopefully they can assist you with that and take care of you. There is a lot that goes into planning a Disney trip, I understand, and when the real world seeps in, and affects us this way, affects our happy place, affects the the Magic Kingdom that we come to know and love, it's very troubling, isn't it? To know that the real world and rare occasions seeps in and affects the magic world that we like to escape to. It's hard, and I know that when you've planned a trip, especially if you're planning a Disney World trip, a lot of folks have to plan well in advance, sometimes years in advance, to make that happen. To know that you're not going to be making that trip is a real, it's a heartache, isn't it? It's hard to know that you had all this planning, preparation, and excitement going into it, and now potentially you're not going because of something that no one could have predicted, something that no one could have imagined was going to happen. So once again, if you're somebody who has a trip coming up between now and the end of March, April 1st is when Disney is going to be reevaluating and potentially reopening their parks and resorts. Go ahead and give the Walt Disney Travel Company a call for questions and cancellation, 714-520-5050. Once again, that's 714-520-5050. Keep in mind those poor cast members that are working the phones at the Walt Disney Travel Company. They are going to definitely be overwhelmed and under mounds and mounds of calls. So please, maintain patience and understand that they're doing the best they can to take care of you. It is everybody's happy place, and it's hard to know that it's been affected this way, but it makes you even more grateful for the time that you have been able to spend there, and even more grateful for when it comes back, right? That's the one positive way of looking at it. So hopefully we will see Disney reevaluate this and the coronavirus sort of fade off here in the coming weeks, and maybe Disney will even be able to reopen sooner rather than later. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been continuing coverage of the Disney parks closures from coast to coast and around the world, and the coronavirus effect that has been placed on the Disney parks portfolio. Folks, if you would like more in-depth coverage, if you would like to hear more from us, make sure that you are subscribed. You've got that notification bell turned on so that you're updated every time we've got something new for you. And then we've got a lot of other fun stuff, a lot more happier and upbeat content for you throughout the week. It's not usually so grim that we love to share with you. Plenty more in the can where that came from that we can't wait to share with you. So make sure that you're all logged on for us, and you've got every realm of contact possible for us. So at Kingdom Report Live is where you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Kingdom Report Live. I'm Wade Heath at Wade Wire on Instagram, Facebook, and the Twitters. So keep that in mind. And then on top of it, Saturday, if you would like to see me as well as our panel, Tyler Crouch, Katrina Manzone, live from Walt Disney World on the final day of operation out there will be Gared Hassel. Yes, we are sending him in. We'll put him in a hazmat suit and ask him not to touch anything. But Gared Hassel will be out there, and Kurt Carlson will all be together at the studio here in Burbank with Gared out at Walt Disney World for extended coverage of this massive closure going on right now at the Disney parks here domestically, and how that's going to affect everybody overall. So lots to talk about, lots to touch on come Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube, and of course on our Facebook page on Facebook Live. We look forward to you joining us at that point as well. Stay safe, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a great pleasure. I hope you have yourselves a wonderful night, and again, don't let this dominate your lives. Don't let this ruin anything for you. Think about the folks that have lost their lives. Think about the folks that have been adversely affected by this, and just realize that you're pretty fortunate. You're pretty fortunate day to day, and Disney parks will come back. If there's one constant in life, it's that everybody gets there happily ever after at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. We'll find our way back to it. Okay. Until then, keep dreaming. Keep looking up to that second star to the right. And we will talk to you, if not sooner, we will talk to you Saturday at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.